to Sean with Bob Solomon Stories with a gentleman that's known Bob since he was basically born, probably second grade, first grade, something like that. Den
Yeah.
Wilhelm. Den, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Sean.
All right, so where are you located currently?
I live in Gastonia, North Carolina since last May.
All right, so let's talk about the very beginning. So you grew up essentially close to Glen Falls in Queensbury, close to Lake George in upstate New York, and you went to Glens Falls grade school and high school with Bob. So let's talk about how did you first meet Bob? Where was the situations that you first met Bob?
I can remember it vividly because we were in school and we got in a little skirmish with each other, and not realizing where we lived because we only lived around the corner from me. And I guess his mom caught wind of it. I don't know, my mom called his mom, whatever, but Bob's mom made him come to my house and apologize. And ever since then, we were buddies.
So who started it? Like, what was the skirmish over?
Yeah, I really don't remember. I think we were just being boys. And I really don't remember cause. So all I know is that it wasn't a big deal, but at that age level, maybe. But it turned out to be a good thing. We got to know each other.
All right, so let's talk about the merger of the families. One of the things you guys got to celebrate together every single year is your birthdays were a day apart. Mm-hmm. But they also were right before Christmas. So just speaking to that for a second, having your birthday right before Christmas, did you ever feel shorted?
Everybody asks that question. I never did. When I was a young kid, I remember my mother was sad about something. I said, "What happened?" She says, "Well, sometimes when you get a birthday, you get gifts a week before with everybody, and everybody shows up, and then you got Christmas gifts before Christmas, and you get Christmas, and you wake up the next day and say, what am I getting today?" And nothing happens.
All right, so let's talk about their family and Bob's dad specifically and his mom. Yeah. What are some of the first situations of spending time with his family that you really remember up in upstate New York?
Well, I mean, we had back and forth dinners with each other, but our dads knew each other pretty darn well. And but Bob's mom took us skiing all the time at Gore Mountain, and she was a avid skier, and that's what we did a lot. And then Bob and I just kind of grew up, and before we know it, we're getting older, and we're taking trips together. Actually, one of our trips we took was to Europe. We spent some time in Germany together, and came back. And actually, it was a month after I took my wife because my dad was a Mercedes-Benz dealer, and we had to go over there and pick up some cars, and it was a lot of fun. I got Bob interested in going, so I went again. And his father pulled all kinds of strings to get him a passport right away. And then we got the Fagawi trips, and then we've been to Myrtle Beach. We've been to Texas a couple times, Louisiana, things like that. I was kind of getting geared up recently to surprise him a visit to Carmel, Indiana, where he lived. But because I was going to give him this hat, and that's not going to happen. Actually, I'm going to pin this hat next to this flag. I think it's a good idea.
Well, it's good you get the flag back. Why don't you show that for a second on screen?
Sure. This is the flag I sent Bob. It was made by Veterans, which is on Bob's Alley. And I didn't know what size because they had various sizes. So I think I picked the right size. And I asked Bob after he got it, because it took a long time to get it. It wasn't like they built it and sent it inside a week or two. It took a couple months to get it. He finally got it, and because they had a lot of orders to fill. So when it came, I said, "Hey, Bob, would you put that flag on the couch so I can get an idea about the size, along with a wine bottle I sent him that had Trump on it, so I get an idea so I could get myself one or something. I don't know if I wanted that size or something bigger for my house." And anyway, I got the flag as another gift because he's such a patriot. loved his country.
All right, so here's a great example of Bob being not just a patriot, but he often sailed with the Wounded Warriors and the Navy SEALs in the Fagawi race, but he always would honor a lot of the different individual veterans with different flags and everything else. And so when you went on the Fagawi, was it kind of the same setup as far as the multiple flags on the Hilliard or the Halyard?
It was absolutely, Sean. He was so proud of those flags, and we had a father to one of his son was killed in Afghanistan, and we had veterans in there that lost their legs. One of them lost both of his legs, and it was a thrill to be on a boat on a ship that size.
So what's a little bit of the stories of when you were actually on the race? Was there anything to speak of, some funny things or unique things within that trips that you were on?
I could tell you one story that my wife went with me on the second one, and we had the bowel room of this thing, and my wife was so funny because when she gets up in the morning and there's all these bodies sleeping all over the place, drinking too much, and she said I was tipping over bodies, over Oreo cookies all over the floor. Let's put it this way: the Fagawi race was important, but it was a lot of fun as well. And Bob always had this. He was so well known in his Fagawi program that he always had two vessels that had the best parking or docking areas in the whole place. And he was very much part of Fagawi, very much in fact part of Fagawi.
What year did you go?
I got the hats in the other room. Let's say about 5 years ago. Trying to figure, time flies so fast, you just don't know anymore. But I'll say about 5 years ago.
So was it? I was there 2019. Were you there 2019, right before COVID? It was kind of that.
It was before COVID. Yeah, it was definitely before COVID. So it might have been 18.
18.
Yeah, 18, 19. I did 2 years in a row. Then COVID kicked in. I remember talking to Bob and say, Bob, when are you going to do the next race? COVID really slowed things down. The race is like canceled. And so he did something else. I forgot what he said he did. It might have been somewhere out of the Nantucket area, but I'm not sure what he did after that in terms of racing site. He was racing all over the place, especially in his yacht club where he lives.
So in 19, I want to see if you were there. If you were there and I don't remember, I apologize, but something very specific happened in 19 when we left port and we started the race, and we were far out that we couldn't see the land anymore. It was about 45 minutes into it, and all of a sudden there was dead air.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And all the boats started bouncing up against each other, and then Bob pointed to the west and basically was like, you see the ripples in the water? That's where the wind is. And we tacked over to it and then caught a 14-mile straight gust that blew us past everybody, and we got fourth place in the big boat division.
I think I was with you on that one. And I remember the dead air one because that's when we broke out the sandwiches. We had nothing else to do but eat. We were watching these little J20s go by us because they were tiny little things compared to what we were in. And so if it's the same race, because I remember we had a broken sail. Were you on that one?
No.
The main sail broke, and there's Bob on top of everything. You take the helm, and he's going to fix the sail so we can grab some wind. And I'm not sure I think that was the last race I went with him on that one. Yeah. So maybe it wasn't the same race because you had dead air at one time as well. I'm not in that picture you're showing right now, but I recognize Wendy.
Yeah, this is in 2009. Yeah. This is when they actually won it in their division. They got first place. When we were there in 19, he got fourth. And here's another shot of just kind of Bob chilling on the boat, just as, you know, he was a good delegator too. It was always great to be able to watch him get everybody doing whatever they need to be doing and not really be uh, being a nice guy about it, not really being, an overzealous or really mean captain, I guess.
Oh, you want to make sure everybody had a chance to say they steered the boat. And you get everybody a long time on the boat, the steer. Of course, he's making sure they follow the directions. Like there's instruments there. You just make sure you maintain that one. There's a hat of Bob.
Well, yes, this is when and where was how old do you think Bob was in this pick?
27. 86, 86, 58, 6. Wow. My time flies. Let's put it this way. I got married at age 27, and that was my stag party hat. So
where'd you go?
What's that?
Where'd you go?
Gosh, Lake George, Saratoga. Hit a lot of places that we knew. We had a van. We had a van that carried like 12 people, and somebody was way in the back bartending, and I guess there was a keg back there. I was the designated driver most of the time. But we managed to stay out of trouble. We did good. And there's Bob.
That was Bob speaking at the wedding. Here's a great shot of him looking like he's into it a little bit. Might have a little martini glass. I'm not sure, but no, it's probably with champagne. So yeah. What was his speech like? Let's talk about his speech at your wedding.
Well, Bob liked to goof around, and he had some statistics. Bob was like an engineer, all things, and he had people laughing. And the guy in the back is the part of the band that we had there. That was Bobby Dick, and he was a local icon who just recently passed away. He used to hang around people like Elvis Presley and things like that in his beginning stages, and he settled down and started traveling and had his family in Glens Falls area. And Bob did some he said something funny, but what they did to me is they had a ball and chain on me, a bowling ball with a chain hooked up there around my waist. And he and another friend of ours there, Bill Kennelly, I think you'll see another picture there. They had made me say some commitments that I didn't want to do, but I had to do them. Like doing the laundry or something like that. But anyway, I don't remember exactly all he said because he said a lot of things, but I was a good speaker. He was comfortable talking to the public.
So where was this for you guys?
That was back behind in the church, getting ready for the tunes to show up, or Here Comes the Bride. And I remember saying to Bob, I said, "There he is, Bob, showtime, let's get this thing done." And we were both relaxed, getting it done here. And that's when
so you have a very stout mustache. Have you ever remember Bob having a mustache? He just doesn't seem like a mustache. I remember a couple times he tried to grow a beard on it and just looked weird.
Yeah, I got something going right now that I'll probably take off next week. Going to New York again. It's supposed to be pretty cold, and I'm going next week to take care of a few things. And I had one for many years, and it took me a long time to take that off. I remember when I took my family to Myrtle Beach the first time we had kids, and I sat there in front of the mirror with scissors up to it, saying, "Do I do this? Do I do this? Do I do this?" Snip. Okay, I'm committed. I took off my mustache, and I never had one for years. Literally, probably 25 years.
All right, so here's a shot of you and Barbara on stage, or Barb, your wife.
Yeah.
So any particular fun moments of Bob singing and getting everybody rowdy or anything you want to speak of?
Well, if you see my wife clapping her hands because they made Bob, you can see Bob laughing with a guy next to him. That's Bill Kennelly, the guy I was telling you about. And they had a spiel of things I had to do, and she was, like I was her slave. And you can see the chain hanging down from me and around my neck, because on the ground you don't see it. It's hooked up to a bowling ball. Like,
How do they engineer connect the chain to the bowling ball? It's a
Well,
round ball. How did they connect it?
well, actually, what I did, I actually bought that stuff for another wedding prior to mine a couple of years. I went to a bowling ball alley and bought a $5 ball. And I took it to the body shop and had them fill in the holes with a hook and a chain. And that's how we did it. It's been passed on to other weddings since then. I don't know where it is now, but it's out there somewhere.
It's hilarious. And then that's, for some engineers and Bob,
Yeah.
I'm sure he appreciated your engineering of it. Here's another shot of you guys probably right before you had to put the garter on or took the garter off. And was that the garter moment?
That actually, you know what? That's a tire.
That's a tire? That is a tire. Why is the tire on a chair?
Yeah, that's a tire hooked up to the chain. It looks like he lost the bowling ball already. So yeah, that's the tire. So I had to walk out in the crowd and then introduce Mr. and Mrs. Wilhelm, and I had to walk out with that, which got the crowd laughing because there I am anchored. That was probably Bob's idea.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Here's a shot of him in 2009 winning the Fagawi. So just the whole experience of him always going to the Fagawi, how would you describe his passion behind doing that? And if there's any particular stories that you think are worth telling of what you heard from Bob, because you weren't there every year, but situations you might have heard from Bob of things that happened. And maybe it's not the Fagawi, maybe it's like going to Newport or some other sailing stories you remember Bob telling you.
Well, I remember the first time I went, he and I had to get one of the ships. So we both went together and hopped in a little dinghy. And this dinghy was like floating in the water, of course, but it was like a 4 foot, 5 foot drop. I said, Bob, how the hell do you get in this thing? He said, you jump. So I jumped. Lucky kept my balance. And he and I took this ship to some type of marina in Newport where we met a lot more people. And from there, we were just there forever. And then before we know, we had a ship on to another a marina up the coast, but I forgot what that was, where we bought some coats and stuff like that. So, and I still got that coat before we went into Nantucket. I recognize some people in there. I see Wendy and her husband. I see Jamie. Some people I don't know. I see you.
Nope, I'm not in that one. I was at 19, not 09.
Okay, I see a guy back there in the way back with a blue hat. I recognize. I forgot his name, but that's about it. Because of course every time I've been there were two different crews, and some guys were the same people, but or brand new ones, and of course the veterans are a little different because you get different ones that want to go on the ship, and he invited as many as he could. The thing about Bob though, we sailed to a certain spot where the prep for the Fagawi, he wanted to take some weight off, so we went somewhere privately and we took the anchor out. And the anchor, I mean, I just wanted to pull it out for him. Pulled out the anchor, and I was pulling out all this chain. And probably took out 300 or 400 pounds full of oil, maybe more. And a friend of his, I think it was John, put it in the trunk of his car. So of course, when the race is over, we got to put it back. But he wanted to keep weight down. He said, "The less weight in the bow, the better off we are." That's one of the funny things he did. That was one of his tricks. And he always did pretty good.
So what's just some other stories of like throughout life that don't have to be on sailing or anything that, may be funny, might have been fun or whatnot. They just got to experience life with, because after you grow up, you guys kind of part ways and move on. And
yeah, we stay in touch. Yeah. Well, Bob and I, so you said something about the birthdays. I always called him on his birthday and he always called me on mine. But it was so funny because, hey, Dan, I say, happy birthday, Bob. He goes, yeah, okay. We talked a little bit. And I said, okay, Dan, I'm going to call you tomorrow. So be by the phone. I got this hat. I don't know if you see that hat here. This hat was going to be Bob's. my wife and I went to a Trump rally around the corner from our house, and I got this. And while I was there, I called Bob. Bob was extremely excited. We must have talked to each other a few times. And one of the times he called me and he had his mom on the other end in a three-way conversation. Because she was just excited that we were there because we're all Trump supporters, you know. And that was just the most and last thing we said to each other.
Well,
Yeah.
I wanted to bring this up. So, because of growing up with him, you got to spend a lot of time with the family. How would you describe his mom, and how would you describe his dad, and what characteristics did you see from them in Bob?
Well, his dad took us to DC a couple times, and it was kind of fun because we went to Reagan's inaugurations. We went to the State of the Union. It was kind of cool. I remember being at one of the meetings that his father had to go to. It was a big, huge place, and all of a sudden, Bob and I were by ourselves because Jerry was talking to some people, and they had this serious look on their face. And before they beelined out of there, I don't know, something political was going on in there. He used to play football in the backyard. His father did. He was the quarterback, and kept on throwing passes to us like one-on-ones, and that was kind of cool for a young guy. And his mom took us skiing a lot, made lunch and dinner for us a lot, and Jerry was in DC a lot, so we it was like a Mrs. Solomon taking care of all the kids. And,
So I'm going to bring up something that I know that Bob was, obviously a very big advocate for veterans.
yes,
And he was very proud of his father's, stint within Congress, as well as, being a Marine and being a giant advocate for veterans for the VA and getting the laws passed that the universities had to accept, people that were recruiters on campus. Bob also, not a lot of people noticed it or knew it, but he had an ear problem when he was young.
yes.
Can you kind of describe that, and also how you think that affected him of not being able to serve?
I don't know how effective not be able to serve, but I do know. I remember when he had an ear problem. He literally had a hole. So we went swimming. He had to wear a cap, like a shower cap, and it happened probably at a young age because when we were going to school together in elementary, his mom held him back because of the ear issue. So we didn't graduate together, but we never not stayed in touch. I would sleep over at my house a lot. I'll sleep over at his house a lot. We traveled a lot as we got older. I think I answered what you said about his ears, because then he had an operation where we was
Betraying to the military, betraying to him, because I know that he talked to me about it, that he always kind of felt bad that he never was able to serve like his dad.
Well, I never really had that conversation, but I totally suspect that is correct, because he was a big time veteran supporter. Bob was big time. I don't know if we ever got into those type of conversations. Another good story to tell you about his father, because when we were visiting, and he took us to the Capitol. You ever been to the Capitol? You got that rotunda that you see goes around in a circle.
Right.
Yeah, Jerry took us to a little like a secret passage door, and we had to go up some stairs. We got to go inside the whole rotunda, and there was another one that we got to go above the Capitol, the very tippy top where all the antennas were. We were at the very tippy top of that Capitol, highest you can go. That was a thrill. And then he took us down to a lunch spot where the Congress people meet. And we're sitting at a table, and there was Tip O'Neill sitting next to us, and all these big people. And I remember talking to Jerry because when he was running against Newt Gingrich for Speaker of the House, he backed off. And I said, why? And he goes, well, we had the same goals, just different ways of getting there. In the interest of the party, I backed off, and he was about ready to retire, as I remember. But then before he did, they said, "No, Jerry, you can't. We're going to make you chairman of the rules committee," which I believe, in effect, he became Newt's boss. He directed what's on the floor, and that was a learning experience for me as a young guy. What goes on down there? That chamber is really cool to see and sit in those chairs. Very, very,
Right.
very good experience as a young guy.
Well, is there any other specific stories that I know you've got 1,000 of them, but that you
Mhm.
really want to save for the family to know certain things, or just anything that they just might not know that now they should maybe know?
No. I will tell you a funny story that I did to him. His brother Jeff and I did something. We were at his sister's wedding, Linda, in Rhode Island or Connecticut. Anyway, her husband to be was a member of a band, and so they had a gig to do that night before the wedding, and so we all went, and we had a lot to drink that night, and we came back, and we're in the lobby of the hotel, and it's just Bob, Jeff, and I, and there was this cooler of food there. So Bob, being hungry as Bob's always eating, he pulled everything out of the cooler, and then there was a box of donuts. He'll take a box and crumble them in the cooler, and then he'll grab the milk, pour it back in the cooler, swish it around, and he'll position himself so he could eat and drink. And then what passed his ears, and he made a freaking mess. He couldn't believe it. Jeff and I, oh my God, we were said, well, time for us to go to bed. So we left Bob there because he passed out immediately, fell asleep. And Jeff's room was right next to mine and Bob's. Mom and I were sharing a room. And I said, good night, Jeff. He goes, good night, then. And we're, hey, Jeff. I go, what? He goes, what? He goes, I feel bad for your brother. I think we should take his clothes off. And Jeff immediately shuts his door, takes the key, goes, yeah. We start marching down to the lobby, and we took everything off but a sock. And the following morning, guess who finds him? My mother. And she didn't think that was too funny. But
Are you saying he was in the lobby? Where was he exactly?
he was in the lobby, asleep, passed out, sleeping, and my mom picks him up. Bobby, Solomon, is that you? And he opens up one guy and goes, oh, hi, Mrs. Wilhelm. Not realizing where he's at yet, and not realizing he didn't have any clothes. He goes, oh my God. My father immediately got a blanket for him. And she came up to my room. She was not funny. And the madder she got, the more I laughed. It was one of those situations. But it was a funny scene.
Was there any, bringing up your parents, was there any stories or situations that Bob was with your dad or with your mom, like way back in the day growing up, that was kind of a funny situation that happened?
You know, Sean, I'm sure there are a bunch. But sit here to think about them. Oh boy, I tell you, my dad loved him. Everybody, all my friends loved my dad. We were the house to go to. He was one of those guys that gravitated to our house mostly because of my dad in a lot of ways. And anyway, I think of funny stories. I'm sure there are so many. I just sitting here, I'll probably remember a dozen of them after we get off this phone conversation. But I just know that he was part of the family. My father, yeah, very much part of the family. Even my sons, as they grew up. Jay Bob, you walk in the house, and my youngest son, actually, when he was in second grade, a second grader, sometimes they have to create a story, write it out so they can learn how to write and draw pictures. And then they wall out. They actually put a nice hardcover binder for the kids to bring home to their folks. And my son, Derek, my youngest, dedicated the book to Bob. Because last pay, I dedicate this book to my dad's friend Bob, or something like that, Bob Solomon or Mr. Bob Solomon, and because that's when Bob's dad died. and he was very, very heartbroken for Bob, because he was that close to everybody in my family. He was very much like part of it. He was my best man at my wedding, and on. So we grew up together. I was his best man, by the way.
Yeah, I got to interview Tracy last week. That was she. You should check it out. She told a lot of good stories. So what would you like to say in closing to the family directly?
I would like to say that as good as a friend I was to Bob and am, it's the longest I have been, probably the longest. He was good friends to many, a lot of people, and they have a lot to be proud of, because in his short life, in my opinion, that's something to be proud of. How he was friends to everybody, how he could make friends very well, and what he has accomplished in his short life, especially with his Fagawi thing. He was an engineer. He did really well, and he was brought up so well that, like his dad, he was pro-American, pro-America. Something to be proud of.
Well, Dan, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else you'd like to say at all?
Well, there's not a moment really that I go by that I can think of Bob, because we talked about politics a lot, and he was a pro-Trumpster, and he's missing a big deal. And the Pittsburgh Steelers had a good season, but they got knocked out last week. So I was hoping for his team, because I'm a Giant fan, but I was hoping for his team. And now I'm watching Jeff Solomon's team, because they're still in it. And he's a Washington fan. And I text him once in a while and see how, we try to keep in touch. I never really kept in touch with Jeff until now. And I had to say a few words at Bob's funeral, at me and Ed Conley, because I guess Bob was his best friend in college. And he's a real cool, nice guy, Ed Conley is. And a couple war stories there too. When I visited him at UMass. So it's I remember him. That's the way Bob kept everybody together. New friends became new friends to each other, and that's the way Bob rolled.
It's the same way here in Indianapolis. We're having this coming Saturday, memorial at the sailing club, and we're going to be showing these videos, and everybody's going to honor him. And
we went to his club too. We took a little stint around, and I guess that's a man-made lake that club was on, if I remember right. Does that make sense to you?
That's a reservoir that they built the dam and flooded the
something like that. Yeah.
And
I remember that, and he was proud of the club, very proud of that club.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he had to show me the club. Dad, I got to show you something. So he actually took us around.
In the storm, and I basically had capsized a sailboat when I was a kid, and there's a storm coming onto the marina, and he was like, "Nope, we're going to go out and we're going to sail the boat back to the sailing club." I'm like, "Bob, we got a motor. Let's just use the motor." And he stood on the front of that thing like Lieutenant Dan, holding on to the cables, and I was back on the rudder, and he was basically yelling, keep going for 40 minutes. We were in rain that was going sideways and just tacking back and forth. He goes, "This is how you're going to learn." And after that, I got over what I'd gone through when I was young. And then eventually he was like, "I want you to interview the Navy SEALs and Wounded Warriors on the boat 2019 as we're going across, the ocean in the Fagawi to Nantucket." And that was pretty amazing. So
that Fagawi was a lot of fun. I remember asking him, because I was getting more in a position where I could go again. I got a lot going on, but right now I don't. I just got to find things to do. And anyway, along with the business, I help my son start here in town in Gastonia. I'm kind of like their quarterback for ideas and funding and things like that. helping him out. So I got time, but we're not going to be doing it anymore. But I guess his buddies, I saw Wendy and her husband and John and a couple other guys talking about trying to get the crew back together for another race. Did they talk to you about it?
I haven't spoken to him yet about it. No.
Okay. I think it's coming. I don't know how serious it was, but because we're at after the funeral, we all met at Queensbury Hotel, and they had this room with food and things to drink, and they got in the corner later, and we were talking. You know, the real crew, the ones that were there almost every year.
Right. Listen, Dan, I really appreciate your time today and all the stories about Bob and the family and the friends that will be able to watch this. Will love being able to kind of reminisce. It's kind of the whole point of all these. But is there anything else you'd like to say in closing?
I don't know what to say, Sean. Like me, we all miss Bob. We're gonna miss Bob. He left a memory you'll never forget. You know, he was one of those guys you just won't forget. I certainly won't.
Well, I won't either.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thank you for your time today, and I'm going to close this one out, but just stay on the line.
All right.